Live from iRacing's virtual Autodromo Internazionale del Mugello in the Tuscan region of Italy, where we say good afternoon, sim racing fans, and welcome to the first race day of iRacing's newest pro-level eSports series. This is the FIA SIMAGIC F4 eSports Global Championship. And as always, happy that you're with us for a special presentation of iRacing on the iRacing eSports Network. As always, my name is Evan Pasoko, joined tonight in the booth by Joey Atterbury. And Joey, tonight a lot of excitement because some of the best drivers in the sim world have competed for 12 weeks of qualifying races. Tonight, the top 30 embark on an 8-race championship with $25,000 on the line.
Yeah, you mentioned it. 8 races are going to be up for grabs here, and today we are covering rounds number 1 and 2. Mugello and Okayama are going to be those two 20-minute races that we're going to be having today. But, Evan, we still have much more to go just after today.
Yeah, we don't know where this road around the world will take us before it concludes with a championship race day on November the 2nd for rounds 7 and 8 of this championship. But these drivers will only learn what races they'll be taking part in on any given race day only 24 hours in advance. So they only learned that Mugello and Okayama would open up the championship just yesterday. Now, these are tracks that a lot of these drivers have competed on through that 12-week qualifier, but it says something that when we end here tonight, they can't go and spend 2 weeks of practice getting ready for rounds 3 and 4. They'll only know 24 hours in advance. These are the best. We'll see if they can handle being on their toes like that.
It's going to be a very interesting topic throughout the entire season, but we're going to kick it off all right here in Italy at Mugello. 15 turns, 3.25 miles in length, located just about 45 minutes north of downtown Florence out there. And looking at this track map, you notice that huge monster front straightaway. Lots of draft games are going to be played, defensive lines, and of course, late braking into turn number 1. Elevation changes are throughout here at Mugello, and lots of switchbacks where weight transfer and driving lines are key. A couple of big passing opportunities, of course. Turn number 1, probably your biggest and best, but I'm also looking towards the end of the track. Turn number 15, the very final turn, is a little bit tricky, very downhill, and you have to get on the gas as soon as possible to get the best run down that front straightaway.
It is going to be a challenge as these drivers race against the clock here tonight. Of course, this racetrack built in the early 70s after the long Italian tradition of hosting races on the public roads was shut down. This racetrack started in 1973. It's played host to street bike racing, Formula One, most recently through the 2020 season. And this racetrack is used by the Scuderia Ferrari team for their F1 testing. But it is one of the most renowned circuits in the world, and it is a good challenger, I think, for our 30 drivers to take on here tonight in the very first race of this championship. We mentioned timed racing going to be a key as well. Let's talk through format and how this is all going to play out. As right now, drivers in a live qualifying session getting set to build the grid for tonight's race. Joey, walk us through tonight's race format.
It's going to be a fixed setup as always in these FIA F4 cars. That pretty much means spec racing. All of the competitors are in an identical piece of equipment out there. It's up to the drivers to learn that piece of equipment, learn that FIA F4 car, and extract the most amount of speed out of it. Just a single lap here in a lone qualifying session. So not only do you only have 24 hours to learn the track and prep for each one of these rounds, but qualifying, you only got 1 lap to really get it done. Race number 1 is going to be 20 minutes. Race number 2 is going to be an identical 20 minutes, but we're going to be swapping over to a different track after we finish this first race.
And we mentioned $25,000 is the total prize pool on the line. That is highlighted by a $10,000 prize to our eventual champion. If you finish inside of the top 10 in points, you'll walk away with something in those championship prizes. The remaining $6,000 of that $25,000 total, that is not part of the championship prizes, split evenly amongst all of the qualifying drivers. So you're already in the money by qualifying for this series, Joey, but when we say they're the best of the best, these are drivers who have won championships elsewhere within the iRacing community, many of them very experienced in the real-world racing as well, so they're going to be eyeing those top steps of that championship prize podium.
Absolutely, and there's a few drivers that even I recognize just from the previous F4 championship with Skip Barber Racing School that are here in this global championship. So it is going to be very exciting. Like you said, Evan, this truly is the best of the best in the entire world.
And with that, the qualifying clock strikes 0 and the field is set for race number 1 of this championship here at the Mugello circuit. So let's go down trackside and take a look at your SIMAGIC starting grid as we get set for race win number 1. And it is Luke McCowan on pole position, the driver out of the UK. Will start from pole. He'll be alongside Alejandro Sanchez in the number 47 car. Back on row number 2, Alex Dunn and Martin Kledikic going to start in the 3rd to 4th position, with back on row 3, Hugh Barter and Aaron Vasquez through your top 6 starters. Back on row number 4, it is the Brazilian and Ralph Benitez, starting alongside the American and Michael Janey. Row number 5, it is Graham Carroll and Elliot Veyron starting. That'll be through your top 10 starters. And Gordon Mutch and Elvis Rankin are the top 12. That takes us halfway home. Damon Woods going to be alongside Alejandro Sandra in row number 7. It'll be Felipe Dantas and Maurice Loader in row number 8. Row number 9, we'll see Jackson Resendez line up alongside Nicholas Rubilar. And back on row number 10, it is Hayata Asaga and Felipe Cabrera through your top 20. Row 11, Benny Roberts and Leo Aftarov. And it'll be Marcelo Rivera and Caleb Hides on row number 12. Lucky row 13 to be Jaden Ladich and the Japanese driver number 32 of Kazuki Fujita. It'll be Shoma Shintani in row 14 next to Cody Deeth. Victor Miranda, row 15 with Felipe Hulaito. That'll be your top 30 starters, the top 27 of which put down a time into qualifying. Only the 3, the 17, and the 12 at the bottom of the grid will opt to not take a time into qualifying. They will start from the rear as we get set for a standing start here at Mugello. Timed race with 20 minutes on the board. And we're about ready to turn the lights green for race number 1 of this FIA SIMAGIC F4 eSports Global Championship. Let's go racing in Italy. Early challenge for the race lead down to turn number 1. Sanchez to the outside. McEwen on the bottom of the racetrack, the 47, looking for an early race lead. Left hand, turn number 2 should set up Sanchez well, and it does. He goes to the race lead.
And then we see Alex Dunn slot into that 3rd place position. But you're right, Sanchez out front with Luke McEwen in 2nd. Alex Dunn, Martin Kadlachik, and Aaron Vasquez rounding out the top 5 as we start to head downhill for the first time. And we've got contact 2 cars off, including Michael Janney.
Janney was one of them. The other car off it into the tire barrier was Hugh Barter. Both of them going to take a tow to pit lane. Trough stumble for them in the very first lap of this 20-minute timed event. Race leaders trying to get a little bit of space. Again, it was the good start for Alejandro Sanchez, who allowed him to pull away just a little bit. Pole sitter McEwen drops back to that number 2 spot. Other than the contact we saw between those 2 drivers we had mentioned before, not a lot of trouble, pretty clean through the first sets of corners.
This is going to be kind of rounding out sector number 3 here on this opening lap. One last switchback where the drivers are going to really take advantage of all of that paved area. You see them pretty much cutting those apex curves. You can't cut them too much, but then it comes up to this tricky downhill turn 15, the final corner on this racetrack. I mentioned it's all about the corner exit. Look at how long this curve is, and it's all about right here, putting your foot to the ground first, and now the draft games are abundant.
And he's going to try to use this long front straightaway to draft up to the race leader. Doesn't step at a line, though. Plant parks it right on the gearbox there. And they're going to work together, essentially, down it into turn number 1. Alex Dunn also watching on from 3rd. He looks to the inside. Otto McEwen does not commit to it, though. And these top 6 cars or so, nose to tail, trying to pull away and gap the battle in the midfield. Lap number 1 goes to Sanchez, clocked in at a 1:55.431. That pace will pick up about 7 seconds or so once they're at speed lead. So you're looking at probably 11 laps to go or so, Joey, where the timer works out as of crossing the start-finish line.
You always got to pay attention. That start-finish line is quite a ways down that front straightaway, so we'll make sure to time it all out as these drivers are working lap number 2 here. The tires are fully warmed up. The brains are up to temperature as well. But you see that race leader really abusing those outside curves there through the Arrabbiatas. And got to be careful of those exit alligator curves. If you go too far out, you can bottom out the car. And if you get the bottom of the car on the ground, the front wheels don't have as much grip as you initially wanted them to.
Sanchez has been on the constant improvement all afternoon long. You get an onboard look there with the driver, the 47 machine in the bottom right-hand corner. Clocked in as a top 6 time in the practice session. That improved to P2 in the qualifier. And, of course, by the time we got through a turn and a half, he had the race lead. So he took advantage of her. We'll see what McEwen can do. Dunn, Kadlicic, can anybody else challenge? Not a ton of movement, at least amongst these drivers. You go back a little bit to P6, 7. That's where we start to see cars that have picked up 2-3 spots. You see some of that side-by-side in the background there as the midfield kind of scraps amongst each other. But these leaders lockstep with one another. And again, McEwen going to be on the gearbox of Sanchez all the way down to turn number 1. Another half look from Alex Dunn. That's the yellow car in third, but nothing happens.
Surprised to see, call it these top 5, top 6, try to break away and kind of fight amongst themselves at the end, because if they are able to break that slipstream down the front straightaway, it's pretty much up to those drivers to kind of settle it out for the maximum amount of points. So I think early on, especially in the first half of this race, the first 10 minutes, we're going to see the drivers probably play neat and tidy out here, not cause too much trouble, not try to lose too much time in terms of the track position, and see if they can kind of separate themselves from the rest of the pack, because I see the top 11 is one group. However, the top 5 is starting to try to break it away from Elvis Rankin, Gordon Mitch, and the rest.
And you see those intervals for the race for third. Things awfully tight. Going to be a pretty heavy braking zone. Turn number 10 here, left-hander as they come through Pelagio in this 15-turn, 3.26 mile full layout here at the Mugello circuit. At third place spot, still occupied by Dunn. Kadlicic, Vasquez, and Moore lined up who want to take a shot. But on the leaderboard left of your screen, you see those intervals. Those are the gaps to the race leader. You see those top 4, even top 5 with Vasquez, all within about a second of each other. Big gap then when you get to 7, then to 8, then to 9. So we talk about those leaders trying to gap the rest of the field by maybe working together and at least benefiting from each other's draft. That's what you see there. And then here we go again as we embark on that long run off of turn number 15, back by the start-finish straight, and then head back off to turn number 1. And once more, McEwen and Dunn going to get in line. There's the look off of the back of your race leader, Alejandro Sanchez. And you can see they're going to push up to a top speed of 142 miles an hour that time into turn 1.
The one thing these drivers really have to be careful of, yes, you can get away with bump drafting in these cars, but you really got to line that nose up squarely with the gearbox, that transaxle of the car right in front. And you see our second place car of Luke McEwen also have some front end nose damage. So if you're not too careful about it, you can pick up a little bit of damage. And sure, on the nose cone, that's all right. But as soon as you start damaging those wing elements, you're going to start to lose front end downforce. Now, these cars, they handle tremendously well, and they're primarily mechanical grip based, especially with the speeds. But this long front straightaway, you do not want to be down on any mile an hour.
These cars clock in just under 1,300 pounds, inline 4, 2.0 liter engines with a maximum of 160 horsepower. Or 6-speed sequential paddle shift cars. I think we'll see with most of the onboards that drivers will be utilizing those paddles as well in their sims at home. But sometimes in iRacing, you'll see drivers mix up the wheel equipment, the paddle shifters and whatnot to fit their comfort level. One of the unique things is, yes, these cars are all the same. Yes, the setups are all the same. But those rigs at home can vary greatly. And when you have limited tools in sim to make you comfortable, that setup back at your rig is certainly going to be a key to making sure these drivers are comfortable. Again, pretty quiet on the Western front up front here. Everybody inside of the top 5, 6, pretty stable. Gordon much up 4 spots to P7. He's kind of tagging in to the back end of this lead group. That's that red car, 7th in line. He's got a bit of a gap, though, to get to Graham Carroll P6, but it does show that, well, these top 3 or 4 are pretty much in unison. Some drivers further back wanting to make some noise to the inside in a battle for P5 and through there. I think that was Vasquez picking up a spot on the 31 car.
Yeah, it was a nice late braking move down into turn number 1. So Vasquez puts himself right behind the number 22. A good spot to try to get a podium position when this is all done. But we still got 12 minutes left, not even halfway through this one. And these front 5, like you said, now front 7 drivers, the 29 and the 61, have done a tremendous job to really close in that gap and separate themselves back there from Elvis Rankin, who's currently in that 8th place position. So as long as you're in this draft pack on the last lap, you're putting yourself in an opportunity to get that finish.
Just love listening into the sounds of this circuit with that onboard shot there as they go over the curbs. Thought he might have got a little bit of gravel on the exit of one of the corners. You heard some stones getting tossed up underneath the race car. Not a lot of buffer zone on the outsides of a lot of these high-speed corners. You get to the outside right there, you get a little bit of rumble strip on exit. Nobody really using it there. You got to get back to the right to set up for the left-hander. But there is not a lot of room for error. And when you're tucked up in line behind somebody, Joey, and running so close like these drivers are, you're almost deciding where your braking points are based on the car in front of you because your vision's so limited.
It's almost like flying a fighter jet in formation, that you got your eyes peeled on your competitor right next to you, and you're kind of using their references. As we get a replay down here on the bottom of the screen, I expect one of these cars to go out a little bit wide here and probably turn number 2 and 3 as they're side by side. But you're right, it's tough to spot those braking points. You have to use the cars that are around you and really kind of drive based off of that. And not only that, but Mugello here, they've got these huge apex curbs, call it sausage curbs, call them bread box curbs. And if you don't see one of those things and cut that apex a little bit too tight, you can be going for a bouncing ride.
You saw those drivers go off into what ended up being the turns 4 and 5 complex. I think that might have been Alejandro Sendra and Leo Ovcharov. Those drivers off the racing surface right now. They're down in 23rd and 24th position with those spots lost. And it's very easy to see that bright orange car back at about 7th or 8th. The driver who's trying to make all these big moves is Graham Carroll and others. So they're trying to do their best to make passes, get up to these leaders past halfway home in this 20-minute sprint race. It has been all Alejandro Sanchez thus far, and to be dropped back to watch that battle for P6 right now. Graham Carroll, that's the white and black car, the 29 machine, has that position, and Gordon Munch mentioned he's been the driver on the move. His +5 is the most positions gained for anybody inside of the top 10 right now, trying to get that car a little bit further forward as he tries to continue his march to the race lead.
The car right in front is Martin Katlicik in that black and red number 31. And you got to remember, he actually lost that 4th place position back down to 5th just a couple laps ago going down into turn number 1. So yeah, you're right. If Gordon and Graham back here that are sitting in 6th and 7th, they're smelling blood in the water. Now might be that opportunity. This front straightaway is just so gosh dang long. These cars actually back here, 4th, 5th, 6th, they're going much, much faster than those top 3. But because of the draft, they're just kind of getting pulled along. They're not actually making a bunch of headway down the straightaway.
And those gaps are getting a little bit bigger. Not with what you're looking at now. These top 4 are still, make it top 5 even, with Kadlicic on the back there as the caboose. But these 5 are locked in, but 6 and 7, Munch and Carroll look like they're starting to lose touch just in the slightest. These top 7 have blown the rest of the field out because Elvis Rankin in the right spot is over 5 seconds off of these leaders. So the top 7 have established the ability to decide this amongst themselves. Who decides to make the move first, though? McEwen's had opportunities. Dunn's had opportunities. They have not gone for them yet. When is it go time? Next time by, the stripe will be under 8 minutes, probably in the ballpark of 4 laps to go or so. And with that big draft coming to the start-finish line, and you mentioned it earlier, that start-finish being so long down that front stretch, you wonder if anybody would wait to set it up until the final lap.
I would. I definitely would, Evan, because nobody has showed their cards yet, right? Nobody knows where they're going to make their move. So if I've got something that I want to show that's going to get me that pass, it's going to get me the position and maybe even the win, I'm going to keep that in my back pocket, not show anybody that move until the absolute last moment that I can possibly pull that out and get those points.
Watching this battle for the 8th spot on back, Elvis Rankin's been on the move, up 8 spots, or 4 spots, I should say, to the number 8 spot. But again, that's where you lose touch with those leaders. You see the gap. So Elvis has done a good job of getting spots, but this is now a lose-only possible scenario. There's no other cars that he can catch. He can only get under attack, and here comes Ralph Benitez to the outside, aided by the draft behind, a two-way challenge for 8th. And on the outside of turn number 1, Rankin going to fight back. Benitez should get the inside for the next corner. He does. And much like how Alejandro Sanchez got through to the race lead on lap number 1, Ralph Benitez is through to the number 8 position. All of that battling going to continue as we close in on the final minutes of this race, which has been dominated by Alejandro Sanchez. Can anybody get to the driver of the 47 car out of Madrid?
Going to be difficult, but I think those immediate 2 behind him have plenty of speed. We've seen the top 3 hooked up in terms of that bump drafting down every single straightaway on every single lap. So I think if there's going to be an immediate threat, it's going to come from the 96 and the 22. But if they start to make their moves at any point early in that last lap, don't count out Vasquez, don't count out Kadlecic, Much and Carroll. They're all right there. If we start going side by side, all of these front 7 are going to move towards the front.
Just your onboard perspective with Alex Dunn, who rides in the number 3 spot right now. McLaren development driver at FIA Formula 3. He's got a 2022 FIA British F4 Championship. Can he get the first win in this brand new iRacing eSports series, the F4 eSports Global Championship? He is locked in, coming to what may be 3 laps to go in the opening race of week number 1. Relaxes the fingers, stretches them out a little bit as he gets the top gear, looking to the inside of McEwen. Does Alex Dunn make the move? He does. To the inside in turn number 1, Alex Dunn is through. He's at a race high 2nd.
Pretty textbook late braking pass into turn number 1 using that threshold braking, and now he finds himself with an opportunity to go up there and really start harassing the leader, see if he can get the clean air on his car. But we haven't even talked about it yet. Do you actually want to be the lead car coming out of turn number 15 on the final lap? Because we've only seen him bump drafting all the way down that front straightaway. Can the cars overtake before the line?
And if you're in that 2nd place spot, you're going to want to gauge how far back do you need to be in order to get that draft, to get the toe off of the car in front of you when you need it the most. If you're right on the gearbox, you might not build up enough speed to be able to stick a nose out and make the pass. So if I'm Alex Dunn, I've got limited opportunities here, but he's a car length and a half back or so. Let's keep an eye to see if this puts him in position to be able to draft up to the leader before the start-finish line. Still a couple of corners to go. Right-hand 180, that's turn number 12. Left-hand kink, that'll be 13. Right-hand back the other direction, that's turn 14. And then to the final sweeping turn 15. 4 minutes on the clock, likely going to be coming to about 2 laps to go.
Yeah, should be 2 laps to go this time. They're doing about 147. It's that last lap of 147.9. They're doing less than a 1/10 of a second off of their fastest lap each time. So let's see, does Alex Dunn switch it up? Because Sanchez has only had Luke McEwen pushing him on the front straightaway, and it's just kind of same story, different car. Does Alex poke the nose down into turn number 1? No. If anything, it's Vasquez going defensive on Kadlecic. There for the 4th place. Martin's going to try to go the long way around.
And it's going to be awfully close. They cross the stripe almost right on the money to where that would either be 2 or 3 laps to go. It's going to be awfully close on where the timer expires and where these cars line up for actually the final lap of this race. So Alex Dunn may not know until the very final sets of corners where this race will shake out in terms of when we'll see the white flag or not. But the big thing I took away from that run out of turn 15, he got to the gearbox in plenty of time. He's going to want to work with Sanchez until he wants to turn on him, try to push him down those straightaways. Get away from McEwen in third. You do not want that 96 on the back end of your car to make a move on you for second and take away your ability to fight for the race win. Look at these top cars all lined up. 7 of them in a row. They've all got a chance to make some passes late. There is clean racetrack up the road from these race leaders. And not only is the fighting going on up front, but excitement back in the pack as well, as there's fighting for P12 going on as well. Let's take a second look.
Yeah, this is down on the bottom of the screen. I think this is Elvis Rankin right in the middle of this group here. And you see 3 wide in contact on the exit of turn number 1, left rear to front right, and sends one of them around. That is such a tricky corner, especially when you're 3 wide. You're trying to use that compression, the extra grip from the incline, and just a couple of cars were fighting over the same spot.
And here comes Alex Dunn. They'll take the stripe 5 seconds short of lap time to the end, so that'll likely be 2 laps to go. Can he get the race lead? Outside, turn number 1, going to be the non-preferred lane, but if he can get that front wing there, it's going to give him the inside positioning into turn number 2. That's been the money spot tonight. Can we see Sanchez fight back? He does a good job and holds off Dunn. An impressive effort in turns 2 and 3 as the 47 stays in P1.
This Mugello track kind of lends itself to natural defensive lines. This is the one area that you really would have to move over to make a defensive line. But a lot of these switchbacks, they kind of exit on one side of the track, which is the defensive entry to the next corner. So I think that Alejandro Sanchez up front was kind of given a little bit of a gift just the way the natural turns are here with this Mugello circuit, because Alex Dunn in this black and yellow number 22, who's right in front of the car we're riding on board with, is certainly applying a lot of pressure. He seems like he's got the fastest car, the fastest speed on the racetrack currently.
The fastest man in qualifying was Luke McEwen. You're on board with him there. Hasn't led a lap in this one. Slid back to second, now to third. Is there anything that the Bernani 6 machine can pull out of the hat after he was a top car in both practice and qualifying earlier in the afternoon? He wants to try to draft up to Dunn. Dunn still getting the toe off of Sanchez. Going to make that difficult. And as the clock approaches 0, going to be closing in on the start of the final lap of this race. And again, watch the gaps. Alex Dunn, car length off of the back of Sanchez. Drafting up. He'll again go to the outside. And side by side, we go for the race lead. Now Sanchez going to get some side draft. Look at McEwen. He looked to the inside. That was sealed off by Sanchez. Now Dunn shuts the door on the outside and into turn 1. New race leader, it's Dunn. Overcooks it a little bit though. Sanchez back to the outside for a moment.
He slid wide in turn number 1, but was able to recover it by the time he got turned into 2. But here comes Sanchez, and I think that Alejandro is actually being a little bit coy right now. He could have had an opportunity, and now he's actually made contact with the right rear of our leader. He's got front left wing damage on the number 47. That's going to affect the top speed, the run to the line.
Final lap of this race. Only a handful of more corners halfway through this final 3.26 mile lap. Sanchez now dropping back a little bit. Again, you're going to want to build up some of that run to see if you can get there in the limited time in the run to the start finish line. Handful of corners to go for these leaders. Left hand turn 11.
You see the force feedback cranked up on Alex Dunn's sim rig over there. He wants to feel every single apex, every single corner, and it's come down to the final few. He's only got a little bit to hang on, but Sanchez, McEwen, Vasquez, they're all coming.
And is it too much of a gap as Sanchez looks at a 0.4 of a second difference to Alex Dunn up the road? Is it going to be too much for them to catch the Irishman who took the race lead no more than a half a lap ago? Final time off of turn 15. They'll serpentine down the front straightaway. Can they get to Alex Dunn in time? No, they cannot. And Alex Dunn wins in Italy for the first race win of this FIA SIMAGIC F4 eSports Global Championship, leading only the final lap of the race.
What a move, saving all the best stuff for the last lap and comes home with the victory. I think I saw 3/100ths of a second separating 7th and 8th back there as the rest of the field comes across. But what a story from Alex Dunn to capture the first win.
And they weren't able to catch him at the end. They were side by side of the stripe for second. I think Sanchez hangs on for that one, and McEwen will settle for third in the podium for this first race of tonight's round one doubleheader. We'll talk full results and talk to your top finishers in just a moment. We'll take an opportunity to stop aside. When we come back, we'll return to this Mugello circuit. Post-race results and interviews are coming up next. Alex Dunn in the win column with race number 1 here at Mugello.
World of Outlaws Dirt Racing 24 will be available September 17th. Pre-order your copy today.
back live at iRacing's virtual Mugello circuit, where coverage of tonight's race is brought to you by World of Outlaws Dirt Racing 24. Dirt Racing 24 takes the official game of the World of Outlaws to the next level, featuring 2 new series, new tracks, and an all-new challenge mode, and new gameplay features like an adjustable wing and variable track states. Pre-order the Gold Edition to receive early access to the game 3 days early and get 2 exclusive alternate schemes with Brandon Shepard and Donnie Schatz in their alternate cars. For more information, visit worldofoutlaws.game.com. By Exocross. Take an out-of-this-world off-road experience with Exocross. Master 3 unique vehicles, advance through 6 championships in career mode, and take on dozens of unique challengers and special events to show off your speed. Exocross is available now. Visit exocrossgame.com for more information. And by SIMAGIC. Dominate like the pros with SIMAGIC, a leading sim racing manufacturer. Try their module P1000 pedals with haptics or their best-selling GT Neo wheel. Stay tuned for all new wheelbases and more on the horizon. Well, let's talk with your top finishers as race number 1 of this F4 Esports Global Championship has come to a close. And in the win column to start it all off is Alex Dunn, as we are officially off and away for this 2024 championship. Alex, congratulations, leading only the final lap in this one.
Yeah, no, not bad. I'm pretty happy. Pace looked really strong. Obviously, in the end, it was an Apex 1-2-3, which means we were doing something right as a team. So yeah, I'm pretty happy.
Talk us through those strategies. Obviously, you start in 3rd position. You guys seem to work together for a lot of that race, and then kind of methodically made the move for P2 first, and then waited until the start of that final lap to go for the win.
Yeah, I think obviously this is a single championship, so there's no team orders, but I think it was still the smart thing to do to work with my teammates at the beginning and push away and try build some form of a gap, even with how strong the slipstream seems to be in F4. But no, I think, I just sat back and managed my tires for a while and let the guys in front do the hard work. And then on the last 2 laps is when I went for it.
Obviously, you guys have been all over the globe in the qualifying for this championship, but the fact that you don't know where you're racing until a day ahead of time, how does that affect the prep for you and the team as a whole, not knowing Mugello was first up until yesterday?
I think for others it's maybe a little bit more difficult. I think for me it's probably one of my strengths. I feel like I'm usually typically quite quick at adapting to new tracks and new cars, and I think having the real life experience in F3 as well, where you don't get a whole lot of laps on a race weekend. I think my natural way of racing is kind of built into not really having a whole lot of track time. So I think this format's probably in my favor.
We hit the reset button and we head across the globe as we'll head to Okayama International Circuit for race number 2 on the day. What's the outlook going into that one as you try to defend this race win?
We'll have to see. I think my pace in Okayama is a little bit less strong than what it seemed to be at Mugello. But no, I think overall as a team, the pace between all 6 of us still looks really strong, and I don't see why we can't do the same again. Looking forward to seeing it. We appreciate the time, Alex. Again, congratulations on the win. Thank you. The race winner for race number 1 of the afternoon, Mugello in the books. It goes to Alex Dunn. Second place tonight, Alejandro Sanchez leads a race-high 11 laps. Joey's with him.
Yeah, Alejandro Sanchez, congratulations on the opening round. 2nd place, not too bad. How does it feel?
Very good. I wasn't expecting to be so fast in queue. I hit my PB there, so quite happy with that. Not much more you can ask for, really, and the race went pretty smoothly with all 3 of us bump drafting and trying to stay clear of anyone else.
I got to ask you, because you were in clean air the whole time, you had to have known the dominoes were going to fall and the draft games were going to play. What's that like? Were you kind of planning any defensive moves, or did you have a strategy at the end, or just kind of what the cards came out on the table is what it was?
Pretty much just staying alive. Not much more you can do really with the way the new front wing is. You just gotta make sure that you don't have damage, which is what happened to Luke. He had some front wing damage, and I had some front wing damage as well from the last lap, so I couldn't really make a move or anything. But overall, gotta say I'm pretty happy with how the race went. It's all about getting the points on the table and trying to not score 0 points at any race because we crashed out or anything. So yeah, quite happy with the teamwork that we performed today and looking forward to the next one.
Last question real quick for you, because we're totally flipping the script with Okayama, a small technical track compared to the draft track that was Mugello. How's your pace between the two?
In practice, I was a little bit better at Okayama than I was at Mugello, because I feel like the Okayama setup suits my driving style a little bit better. The Mugello setup was a little bit too understeer for me, and Okayama is a bit more on the limit in terms of oversteer. So yeah, hopefully this suits me a little bit better and I can be a little bit faster. But yeah, at the end of the day, this car has a lot of draft, so being in first is actually not good. I think, because the other cars just have better tires, while in Mugello it was actually better to be in first, I reckon, because of the understeer. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Well, congrats on the second place and good luck in Okayama.
Thank you very much.
Well, Evan, that was Alejandro Sanchez finishing second in our opening round.
Continue down through the podium. It is a third place finish tonight in race number 1 for Luke McEwen. Luke, congratulations. It's a good result for you and the team, but we're just talking with Alejandro mentioning that some front wing damage might have hurt that 96. Just kind of walk us through all that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good quali. I wasn't expecting it to be a pole lap, but nonetheless, it was good to get all of us up there. And then it was just teamwork from there to try and lock out a good spot for the team. Yeah, like you said, the wing damage didn't help. I don't really know how it happened. I think it was some internet issue, because I never did anything weirdly to have that or hit anyone. But yeah, it hampered the race a bit, but I'm happy to still get third from it. I think it's going to be all about being consistent in the championship, so yeah, I'm happy with that.
And obviously, running with your teammates up front, Alex said that it's an individual championship. There's no team championship. There's no team orders. But you guys all kind of silently understood the objective, to your point, right? Work together, get up front, fight it out amongst yourselves. How do you balance that line between we can work together and benefit each other, but in the end, we've all got to make moves for ourselves?
Yeah, it's very tricky to obviously make those decisions, but I know all of us respect each other on track, and we know we're not going to do anything silly to put anyone else's races, jeopardize anyone else's races. So yeah, I think we all know that all of us in the team are smart enough, I guess, to make the right decisions.
Headed across the world, Okayama is coming up next. You feel like that's a place you guys can also be competitive at?
Yeah, I think, seeing how we did at Mugello, I think, we're the team to beat at the moment. But personally, it's not a good track for me, but I'll see what I can do.
Well, we'll let you get to it. We appreciate the time, Luke. Again, congratulations on a good showing.
Thank you.
Your third place finisher from this one. A big thanks to Alex, Alejandro, and Luke for giving us some time post-race to chat. And let's take a look at your full race results for the first race of this championship here in Italy. It is Alex Dunn with the race win. He leads one and only lap, the very last one, en route to a 0.3 of a second victory over the driver who led 11 of the 12 laps completed. Sanchez side by side with his teammate Luke McEwen to the line. They finish in second and third in that order. Aaron Vasquez and Martin Kadlicik round out 3 of your top 5 finishers. Somebody I want to highlight there, though, Nicholas Rubelar up 11 positions, an incredible march from 18th to 7th. He's the biggest mover in the field. Same with Moritz Lohner, also big gains to the driver who comes home in 9th, with Felipe Dantas rounding out your top 10.
Get across the page here in just a second, and Felipe Cabrera finishing there in 11th place. Elvis Rankin unfortunately fell down a few spots throughout today's race to finish in 12th there. Elliot Bayron in 13th, with Jaden Ladick in 14th. Jackson Resenda, the Brazilian driver, finishing inside the top 15, with Khalib Hides in 16th. Felipe Juliato in 17th. Shoma Shintani, one of the Japanese drivers, finishing in 18th. Hayata Asaga in 19th, and Marcelo Rivera in 20th.
That'll also be the final spot that finishes on the lead lap in this race. All of these drivers do not make it to the scheduled distance with Ralph Benitez, Damon Woods, Cody Deeth, Alejandro Sendra, and Leo Ashtarov through your top 25 positions. Miranda, Fujita, Roberts, Barter, Janey. They were top 30 finishers. But again, those bottom 10 all with some work to do, and work still to do in this first race day of this global championship, because one race down, one race to go. And that's the other interesting thing. We talk about the fact, Joey, these drivers only get a 24-hour advance notice to practice. That's not just for one track. That's 24 hours to practice for two. So we both asked those top 3 finishers, how do you feel about Okayama coming up next? How does that compare with your strengths and weaknesses? Some of them said, listen, I think Mugello kind of fit my driving style better. Curious if, knowing that coming into today, they may have spent some extra time putting into practice to the Japanese circuit, whereas other drivers may have done the opposite.
And to your point, I mean, 2 different tracks, Evan, and on paper, it couldn't be 2 more different tracks. The fast-flowing Mugello to now the tight and technical Okayama.
Race 2 is coming up next. You're not going to want to miss it. It's week number 1 of the FIA SIMAGIC F4 Esports Global Championship. We're back on the other side. From Mimasaka, Japan's Okayama International Circuit, we are go for the second race of today's doubleheader in the opening race day for the FIA SIMAGIC F4 eSports Global Championship. Well, race number 1 in Italy has gone in favor of Alex Dunn, and now we re-rack them and run them again. Happy that you're still with us. Evan Pizzoco and Joey Atterbury on the call with you, and it is going to be like this all season long, an 8-race championship divided amongst 4 double-header race days. And we take a look at where we stand on the schedule with Mugello behind us. Okayama up next. 2 very different tracks, Joey, head-to-head for week number 1, where if you had a good week to kick it all off, that's great. Put it in the back pocket, carry the momentum, and if you had a rough opener, you got to shake it off and get right back into it.
And these are the only 2 rounds that are revealed, the only 2 tracks that the drivers actually know. They only have 24 hours in advance once we get up to that next round of 3 and 4 to get ready for those pair of races. And speaking of, it's a totally different racetrack between Mugello and Okayama out here. It was a fast-flowing racetrack over in Italy, and now it's a much, much tighter technical racetrack over here in Japan.
And we mentioned off at the top that drivers had to qualify into this championship. Well, it was the top 10 drivers from 3 different regional championships that qualified for this. Both the Americas, the Asia Pacific, and the Europe groups all raced head-to-head 12 weeks to send their 10 best. The interesting kick in all of that, Joey, is all of those regional championships were more or less regionally based track-wise as well. So jumping from Italy to Japan, and who knows where we'll be for rounds 3 and 4 in a couple of weeks' time, means these drivers may be on some tracks that they haven't driven in a little bit.
I think it's one of the beautiful parts of this championship. It truly is a global championship. We're taking tracks from all over the place, drivers from all over the world, and that's what we've got here. The top 30 of the best are going to be competing at Okayama International Circuit for round number 2 here. You see it on the screen, 11 turns, 2.31 miles in length. First opened in 1990, but I've mentioned it a couple times, a totally different racetrack than what we just saw over in Italy. This is a small technical racetrack, and I think it has 2 different faces. Sector 1, a little bit more medium speed, fast flowing. Turn number 4, good passing opportunity. But then after the back straightaway, going into that tight turn 5 hairpin, the track slows down. It's much more like an extra large kart track out there, something that these F4 cars are going to feel very home at.
And technical is the name of the game, and this racetrack opened back in the 1990s as essentially a private racetrack, and it's a bit of a remote location, so much like Mugello earlier, where there is no active top-tier championship in terms of a global world championship. This racetrack's still one of the very best out there, and it's such a unique part about iRacing too, is we can go to a racetrack no matter how remote, how old, how new it may be. And I think to your point, I think this parodies well with how different of a racetrack it is compared to where we started today's racing. And again, we'll talk prizes. That's the name of the game after this 8-race championship, Joey. $25,000 on the line in total. Of course, that $10,000 prize going only to our champion who gets the lion's share.
It's definitely some changing type of money, especially when you're looking at launching your racing career. 25 grand on the line total there. It's pretty impressive what the FIA, what SIMAGIC in this F4 Global Esports Championship is doing. $10,000, 4 grand going to second, 2 grand going to third, but really you want that $10,000. It pays all the way out to 10th, but everybody has their eyes on top.
And our eyes start to look to where we sit in qualifying. Drivers are actively on track now. Same story as before, Joey. You highlighted how challenging a single lap of qualifying is. That's what these drivers are dealing with here tonight. And of course, as we embark on this 8-race championship, you can stay in the loop with information about this series. Keep up to date with the schedule, the standings, and more. All of that can be found at iRacing.com/FIA-F4-esports for more information, and follow us through to that championship. We'll be racing throughout the rest of the fall. Race number 3 and 4 on this championship, September 28th, rounds 5 and 6, October 12th, rounds 7 and 8 on November 2nd. Of course, those tracks still to be determined. That's going to be an ongoing theme. Well, qualifying is starting to round to a close, Joey, so why don't you walk us through this second race of the day with our race analysis.
It's an identical format to what we just had at Mugello, so everybody is going to be in those FIA F4 cars, and it is a fixed setup. When we talk about fixed setup, the best way to describe it is it's spec racing. That means every single car and driver has the exact same opportunity. They're on the exact same track. They can't adjust tire pressures. They can't adjust any alignment settings, so it's literally up to that driver to understand that piece of equipment and go and extract that lap time out of it, whether it's Mugello or here at Okayama. The race is going to be 20 minutes, just like what we saw previously, and as always, only one qualifying lap to set the grid. Not just that 24-hour notice to learn the track in order to race the track, but only one timed lap to get it done.
And I mentioned the point on drivers kind of picking and choosing where they would put their practice time in the 24-hour window leading up to these races, Joey, is because there's not really any time to get practice in between these two races. Only about maybe 15 or so drivers actually got down to time of the practice session as they transitioned from one race server over to the other one. So even those who got a lap, 2, maybe 3 in between, you're not really learning anything, right? That's just kind of getting the muscle memory back, reminding yourself of your braking zones, but you're not learning anything in those couple of laps of warm-up. All that is getting back into this mindset of this racetrack. All that learning had to happen last night, this morning.
I actually want to go back to what Alex Dunn said in his real-world racing career. It's very similar to what real-world drivers do. Yeah, sure, you can practice on the sim and get in the rhythm, but when it comes time to actually perform, you have a very limited amount of time to get up to speed, get strapped in, understand what the car can give you, and then go out there and actually perform. So I think a lot of these drivers, which the majority of them have a lot of real-world racing experience, it kind of suits their style, like Alex was saying, but it still comes down to performing when the time matters most. And guess what? We're about to start race number 2.
Qualifying has drawn to a close. Why don't we take a look at your SIMAGIC starting grid for race number 2 of this championship and the final race of today's doubleheader. And you mentioned Alex Dunn, who took home the checkered flag in the first race today at Mugello. He is on pole position, a 128.240. How about right alongside him, Alejandro Sanchez? They finished 1-2. They start 1-2 here in this second go-around. Row number 2 is going to see Graham Carroll and Cody Deeth line up. They'll start in 3rd and 4th position. And back on row number 3, it'll be Hugh Barter in the number 68 machine. He starts alongside Kalicic in the number 6 spot. Row number 4, it'll be Jaden Ladich and Luke McEwen. A little bit of work to do for the driver who took the 3rd step on the podium, but a good starting spot nonetheless with Gordon DeBonch and Aaron Vasquez on row number 5. Row 6 will be Nicholas Rubilar and Ralph Benitez. That'll be through position number 12. Back on row 7, Elliot Veyron, Moritz Lohner, they'll make up row 7. Row number 8 will be an American duo of Leo Overcharb and Michael Janney. Victor Miranda and Felipe Cabrera, they make up row number 9. That puts them 17th and 18th on the grid. At row number 10, Alejandro Sendra and Damon Woods will be your top 20 starters. Felipe Giuliano and Jackson Resende will start in row number 11 with Felipe Dantas and Hayata Asaga, row number 12. And to round out the field, it'll be Fujita and Rivera, row 13, Hides and Shintani, row 14, and Roberts and Rankin, row 15, 29th, and 30th. Only Elvis Rankin, who starts in 30th position, did not successfully complete a time in the qualifying session. Everybody else qualifying based on speed. So we hit the reset button, 20 minutes back on the clock. We're ready for race number 2. Let's go racing in Japan. It's an early challenge and an early pass for the race lead. Alejandro Sanchez through to the number 1 spot.
finds himself in familiar position, clean air up front, and then Graham Carroll slots into that third place position in that red number 29. But this is the first time down this back straightaway, not nearly as long as Mugello, but these FIA F4 cars can pick up a draft.
And it is a high-speed run down to the hairpin corner, turn 5, almost 3 wide for a moment. Side by side, the battle for 4th position between Carroll and Barter. Those two yellow cars, the black and yellow machine being the advantage there to Barter, Deeth and others lined up behind. So not a ton of movement in and amongst your race leaders. Trouble early for the 35 and the 51. Their names dropped to the bottom of the scoring pylon. So some sort of an issue on the starting lap for these two. But shades of race number 1 today. And we're in Mugello. Sanchez started from second, took to the race lead early. He would go on to lead a race high 11 of 12 laps. Can he do the same and get in control here at Okayama? First lap in the back pocket, and those top two already working together. Not a lot of movement as you look through the field there. Most everybody's staying in line.
Yeah, it looks to be a little bit single file right here to start lap number 2, but trust me, I think that the landscape of this race that we're going to see at Okayama is going to be completely different. Through this first sector, I mentioned it's much more flowing, much more medium speed, but out of this corner right here known as turn number 4, you have to get the throttle down. It's actually very similar to turn number 1 at Mugello, where it's a climbing uphill right-hander, but you have to get the throttle down because it leads out onto this long straightaway. But once we reach turn number 5 right here, it totally changes into a much, much tighter circuit. Evan, I feel like these F4 cars can actually go too wide through some of these hairpins. The shorter distance, the lower line usually prevails, but they have enough mechanical grip to argue side by side.
A little bit of a mini short shoot here to the left-hand turn number 8. That's Redman. Right-hander turn number 9 through Hobbs, and then kind of a wide sweeping. You talk about the momentum side of the racetrack. Down here, we're really technical. Keep your speed up, carry your momentum through the corner. That's turn number 10, the Mike Knight corner, and then the most, I think, easy named corner in all of motorsports, turn 11, last corner, as they come off onto the front straightaway, and that's going to be lap number 2 in the books. Again, you're going to be seeing Dunn and Sanchez push up front, draft together. That's no surprise. What can Hugh Barter do? Can he get into the conversation? Made a pass on Cody Deeth that lap up to the number 4 spot. That's the black and yellow car 4th in line, but it is the all-red 29 and Graham Carroll in 3rd, who has been strong and stable in that 29. Either shake the 68 or get up there in the battle for 2nd, because it seems like Barter on the charge, not going to wait around if that 29's not moving.
I don't know if you caught that, but going through turn number 2 that lap, our 2nd place runner and our 1st round winner, Alex Dunn, really flirted with the track limit over on the driver's right side. He dipped the right rear into the grass, and look at the huge move from Hugh Barter down the inside here of Graham Carroll. He's going to take away 3rd place. So yeah, that straightaway not as long as Mugello, but I feel like that braking zone probably even more powerful.
And just watching the eyes of Alejandro Sanchez to see how concerned is he with the car behind him being a teammate, but knowing that Dunn made a late race move on him for the race win back in Mugello. A couple of glances up, you watch those eyes, but most of it up the road. And again, drivers can kind of pick and choose when they need to be aware of a challenge coming from behind, but I mentioned Barter is going to be getting at Carroll pretty quick, and it happened with Barter making the move. Graham Carroll drops down to the number 4 spot. That +2 spots for Hugh Barter, the biggest mover inside of the top 14. I think that just goes to show you how little movement there has been all throughout the field. And now in this next 5-minute block, that 15 to 10-minute countdown is when we saw back in Italy those top 6, top 7 cars gap the field. We'll see if they can accomplish that again side by side. It's Deeth with a big move in the 3 car as Kadlicic tried to pass him. 3 car said not this time.
And speaking of Cody Deeth, the Australian driver in that bright lime green car is currently sitting in 5th. He's going to get a move made on him by Martin Kadlicic back there down to the inside. So Cody Deeth, definitely one of the fastest in these open wheel cars, and we didn't talk much about him at Mugello, but he's showing up here at Okayama.
been racing sim racing for a little bit more than 4 years. Turned pro 2 years ago, Cody Deeth, and right now locked side by side and wheel to wheel in his fight. Back here for 13th, they're all trying to catch up to that big blob of cars up the road, and it is Moritz Loder in that spot who's kind of leading this group along. He's got Ralph Benitez, Victor Miranda all lined up behind him. But right now they're chasing Loner, who started 14th, picked up a spot, and is kind of the head of this trio.
And I'm going to draw back to what some of these drivers said in their interviews about the setups being a little bit more pushy at Mugello, maybe be able to drive the car a little bit better through the track here at Okayama. I've been watching the rear tires on a lot of these drivers. They're using that gas pedal to really throttle up and turn these cars. The one downside, you can overheat these tires, especially in that slower sector 3, call it. If you overheat them, you're not going to have the power down grip that you need to launch yourself, to propel yourself down the straightaway. So it's just something to keep an eye on over the next 13 minutes.
The onboard look with the driver of the number 20 machine, Moritz Loder, the driver out of Germany, a qualifier for the Porsche eSports Super Cup in 2023 here on the iRacing service, 7th in the world when it comes to iRating. On the road side of things, a ton of experience with Loder as he sits in that number 13 position right now, hoping to get a couple more spots before this day is done. Jumping back to the number 22 machine on the racetrack, that is going to be Alex Dunn up front, continuing to kind of lead the way in that number 2's position. He and Sanchez, again, maybe at this point, 5 laps in, still in that working together phase. Obviously, Sanchez, way wide that time, though, off it in the gravel on the exit of turn number 11. Didn't seem to scrub a ton of speed, though. Dunn drafts up to him, but will not make a challenge, and Sanchez up front almost went a little bit too far off.
You know, it really reminds me of the entry-level racing days. Takes me back to my Spec Miata days, and trust me, the racetrack doesn't only have paved stuff on it. As long as you can keep the momentum going, the grass and the gravel, it can be part of the racetrack too.
We're going to wind the tape back and take a look with Michael Janey. Mentioned a couple of drivers had an issue on the opening lap of this race that took them out. Janey is that white, purple, and orange car that went up and in the air. He got tagged after a spinning car of Ovcharov went around the racetrack in front of him. He got airborne, ended up being able to land on all fours. The other car in there was Loyola of Felipe, the number 79 car, got through scot-free, but then later had an accident. So a handful of drivers out of this one early, most of it happening in the mid to back field. Haven't seen a ton of attrition amongst our leaders, at least through a race and a half to this point. Sanchez still on cruise control. 4-car lead breakaway. That bright red caboose this time is Graham Carroll, 1 second plus. Back to Cody Deeth in P5, slipping it back a little bit. Deeth got passed by Kadlicic and Ladick, and that cost him a ton of spots. That's kind of what fractured 4th and 5th.
I don't know if y'all saw that, but Alex Dunn was literally underneath the transmission of our leader Sanchez through that turn 8, 9, 10 section that previous lap. So I just have a feeling we are seeing something eerily similar to what we saw over at Mugello, just call it 20 minutes ago, where Alex Dunn has lots of pace. He's being very smart. He's just kind of hanging out in the second place position, letting Sanchez pull him along. I think the one thing that he's got to be careful of, though, is Hugh Barter, Graham Carroll, they're definitely right there, and it's only these 4 that are arguing amongst the lead up at the front this time. It was 7 cars last time in the previous race, so it's definitely a little bit, call it narrower in terms of the margins right now, so you just got to be careful, not only out the front, but out your mirrors as well.
And as we look at this battle for P8, Cody Deeth has had his hands full. The top spot in this battle, which was P6, used to be occupied by Deeth, and he has continued to slip down the leaderboard all the way to P10. That's down 6 spots from where he started this race, and that is much due in part to the aggressive driving by the likes of Aaron Vasquez, the likes of Gordon Mutch, and others who have been putting the pressure on him in the back half of this top 10. So Deeth going the wrong direction early, and he's got a couple more hot shoes lined up behind him because Loner, we were talking about him earlier. Victor Miranda behind him. Those next two cars on deck, they've all passed about 3-5 cars each and are going to be looking for a little bit more as we jump back up front and watch these top four. It looks like Carroll kind of 2.5 car lengths or so off of the back of Barter in that battle for third and fourth position, Joey. Almost like as the trail car in this draft, it's going to be a bit more difficult for him to keep the draft as those three in front of him.
It will, as well as the final sector just being so slow. There's no opportunity for drafting there like we saw in Mugello. So you're right, he's just kind of hanging on in fourth place. However, with the mechanical grip out of these cars, if the front two or even the front three start going side by side through this tight 5, 6, 7 sector, it'll put Graham Carroll literally right under their rear wing. So I feel as long as he's still there, call it 2-3 car lengths back, he's got an opportunity at a podium finish, and that's really what you want out of the opening weekend.
So an onboard look with the driver out of Edinburgh, Scotland. A lot of lean as he kind of wills that car through the corner, continuing to watch on from the number 4 spot. Remember, he started this race in third, lost a spot to Barter. Would love to pass that 68 car back, but maybe buying his time to an extent. Again, long run down the front stretch, nowhere near though as long as the front straightaway was at Mugello. Already going to be getting onto the brakes. They'll top out at about 130 miles an hour. That's nearly 15 miles an hour slower than top speed on the front stretch at Mugello with the tow draft. Sanchez still leading. Dunn second, Barter third, Carroll fourth. They continue to open up a gap. That last lap, they were but a tenth and change better. The battle for fifth going on behind them, which is right here. Jaden Ladick in the number 99 car. That's the red car on the outside of the racetrack. Under fire, though. Here comes Martin Kadlecic to the inside. Gets through. Can't clear, though. And now Ladick going to try to pass him back. Do we go 3 wide? Looking to the grass was Luke McEwen.
That was definitely a big old block from that black and red 31, and now tangling wheels. Around goes Kadlecic, doesn't hold the brake, comes back out onto the racetrack, and I believe collects Gordon Much as well.
And that second car involved in that accident went up and in the air. Kadlecic's car destroyed by the contact after that 61 of Gordon Much went up and in the air. Also damaged in that accident, the number 71 car flipped on its lid. Aaron Vasquez, his race going to be done just like that. He finished fourth in the Mugello opener today and had been in a good points position early. Championship attrition for him.
Definitely some frustrations out there on the racetrack, but that's what happens with open wheel cars. When you tangle the wheels up, they don't have the fenders, they don't have the bumpers to really push themselves off of your competitor. You tangle those wheels, oftentimes it ends in tears or in a guardrail, probably a combination of both. But these front three are trying to gap it out over that red 29 of Graham Carroll. I think that Graham is just firmly in that slipstream, and as long as he's within a half second, he'll get pulled along on the back straightaway here. And I think one of the reasons why Graham might be so successful here at Okayama, we didn't talk about him too terribly much at Mugello, even though he was inside the top 10. He's definitely a big go-karter, started go-karting back when he was 8 years old, so he's got to feel at home here at Okayama.
It took up sim racing in 2016, various platforms, iRacing included, raced in F1 eSports Championship as well for Team Red Bull, and now here on the iRacing side of things is competing with Scuderia Ferrari, HP Esports, and wants to get a top 3 finish in week 1 of this championship. Hugh Barter wants to make sure that does not happen. You see the red number 29 through the gap in the wing on that car off of the back end as Carroll's still doing everything that he can to hang in, and Carroll 4th in practice, 3rd in qualified, 4th on track. Very consistent so far here at Okayama. The 20-minute clock winds down to 5 minutes to go, and that'll probably put us at about 4 laps total distance. Remember, it was really close. Mugello ended up adding a lap time on to what I thought was going to be the math. They made it in by about 13 seconds on the clock when they took what would have been the white flag. So we'll have to watch the time very carefully And we'll see if these drivers have the same ability to pick and choose when they want to make the move. This was the time, Joey, where we started talking about where does Alex Dunn make the move. And they had that long run on the front stretch at Mugello that he made the pass coming to the white flag and into turn number 1 on the final lap of this race. Now that front straightaway, not the longest straight on this racetrack. The longest one is the run from turn 4 to 5. So does that change the conversation on where any of these drivers decide they want to make their final pass of this race? It could go for those cars up in the race lead. It could also go for these cars battling for P5 and 6.
Yes, if I'm going to predict the future a little bit like Miss Cleo and put some cards out on the table, I think I want to make the move on the back straightaway here, not on the front straightaway like we saw at Mugello. Yeah, the start-finish line is, call it about 2/3 of the way down the front straightaway here at Okayama, but it's not long enough to have that draft really come into benefit and be able to pass a car. So where I've seen Alex Dunn be very, very fast in comparison to Sanchez, our leader, is coming up out of that turn 4 corner, putting the power down, and then being able to accelerate down the back straightaway. And with what I said prior, that front straightaway not being quite as long, if you can make the pass on the back straightaway and lead the final sector, you can accelerate to the line and hopefully grab that checkered flag.
And that's right here, off of turn 4, the Atwood curve, sweeping 180-degree corner to this long straightaway right there. Dunn gets to the gearbox, probably a halfway down that straightaway, doesn't want to make the move now. So it may be a last lap attempt down that backstretch. You may not want to get the pass for the race lead done before the white flag because it gives you another opportunity for somebody to pass you back. Jumping back to the battle for P7 on back, Cody Deeth is in this conversation. Just got passed by the 17 of Victor Miranda. That's the black 17 up the road. So Deeth slides to P8. There's a handful more cars involved in this one. Some of them sticking a nose out. Looked like Felipe Juliano tried to make a move, tucked back and lied. But this group here, just as tight as the race leaders are.
That black and yellow number 17 who just made the pass on Cody Deeth. I'm talking about Victor Miranda, definitely riding some highs right now. Skip Barber Racing School Championship in that F4 series. He just won that, had a ton of wins. He did not have the opening round at Mugello that he wanted, so Victor definitely looking to capitalize on some good points. He's sitting in 7th right now, and he's actually only a second behind Luke McCune in 6th.
We'll continue to watch those battles through the end. You can watch the intervals on the left-hand side of your screen as well. But up front, closing in on what would be white flag, possibly the next time by. Sanchez still leading. Here they come down the high-speed portion of the racetrack, the backstretch. Does Dunn make the move this time through? He looks to the bottom, going for the race lead into turn number 5. Dunn on the inside, Sanchez on the outside. Maybe a touch of contact, not once but twice. Still glued to each other. Dunn's off it in the sand, trying to hang on. And on the outside of turn 7, he's off it in the grass, but Alex Dunn will not give up.
Now Sanchez now fighting back, more door banging, I should say side pod wheel banging in between the turns, and now more contact between Dunn and Sanchez. That's going to push Sanchez out and force him back to 3rd. Hugh Barter takes advantage, but Alex Dunn looks at the final turn. He's going to come up and see a white flag, 1 lap to go, with nothing but clean air out the visor.
And now Sanchez, who drops down to 3rd, going to be frustrated. What can he do? Dunn protects the inside. Barter going to go to the outside. Throwing it in from 3rd is Sanchez. Thought maybe for a moment we were going to go 3 wide for the race lead. We don't know. Barter still the blocker. Remember, this pass for Dunn was set up on the run down the back straightaway the last time by. Can Barter pay it back this time? Right hand sweeping turn 4 and a long run down to turn 5. Who makes the move?
I just don't think that Alex Dunn got the launch that he needed to. You see him go full serpentine. That might be enough to break the draft and include Sanchez putting the pressure on P2. You see our leader go full defensive, almost 3 wide. Contact between 2nd and 3rd, and now Graham Carroll slips on through to 2nd.
Big damage for Barter. He loses the nose cone on that machine. Sanchez damaged as well, but he's able to drive by in third. To your point, Carroll stays clean in all of it. He'll end up assuming the number 2 spot on track. And for Alex Dunn up front, has he done it again? So good in this race. Set it up, sat in second, was methodical when he made the pass at the right time, and off of the final corner, 2 for 2 as Alex Dunn wins at Okayama and sweeps rounds 1 and 2.
Fireworks for the driver of the number 22. 2 wins, 4 wide going to finish that race there. I think that was arguing over Rankin, Sendra, Dantis, and Ladick back there for what is 8th place. But talk about opportunistic from Graham Carroll slipping through to 2nd, and also Victor Miranda going from 7th to 4th on the last lap.
Big pickups and big drama in the second race of the day, as Alex Dunn is perfect through the opening 2 rounds of this FIA SIMAGIC F4 eSports Global Championship with an incredible result. Let's take a look at your full race results for race number 2 of this championship from Japan. And Alex Dunn clocks in a win to the tune of 1.2 seconds. Carroll sneaks through after Sanchez had contact on the last lap of this race, and after he again leads the most laps, settles for the 3rd step on the podium. It's a pair of Brazilians in 4th and 5th. Victor Miranda and Felipe Juliado will come home in those 4th and 5th positions. 6th spot tonight goes to Luke McEwen, and then it was 5 wide across the start-finish line for 7th on back. That includes Fujita, Barter, Rankin, and Sendra. Of course, Barter had a strong night coming across the start-finish line, missing some bodywork.
Over the page in 11th is Felipe Dantes. He was part of that group that was trying to make it 5 wide across the line. Then Jaden Ladick finishing in 12th place back here. Damon Woods in 13th with Marcelo Rivera in 14th. Benny Roberts with the top 15 effort, and Hayata Asaga finishing in 16th place. Cody Deeth is going to be the last car on the lead lap back here in 17th place. There were a few more that did cross the line, including Maritz Lohner. Aaron Vasquez had problems, as well as Shoma Shintani, and then unfortunately, Evan, everybody from 21st to 30 did not finish today's race.
Well, closer quarters, technical racetrack, not as big of a circuit, and it led to a higher rate of attrition. To your point, none of these drivers get to the scheduled distance, but Caleb Hypes picks up some spot. I mean, he started 27th, ends up 21st, so that's a win in the end for him, gains points, but it's a big loss for the likes of Martin Kadlicic, who started 6th in this race, finishes 23rd. Gordon Much started 9th, comes home in 24th position, and then everybody else, again, Benitez, Rubilar, Veyron, with Janey, and Resende all coming home in those back few positions and round out your field of 30. Well, let's get with the driver of the number 22 car again. Alex Dunn is 2 for 2 to start the season, Alex, and with a little bit of fireworks at the end. That race looked very similar to the first one strategy-wise for you.
Yeah, exactly the same thing. Pushed away with Alejandro until 2 laps to go, and then I went for the move. We had a good bit of racing. I think there was a little bit of netcode, so we were very close to being, or very close and on edge to crashing. But thankfully, we both ended up being okay. But no, I'm very happy.
You guys stayed side by side for probably 4 or 5 corners in a row, battling for the race lead. But we saw this throughout other battles in the field as well. More contact here than we saw at Mugello everywhere. Just tell us about why that may be. Okayama here with a much tighter racetrack.
Yeah, I think you said it yourself. You know, it's a much tighter racetrack. I think the balance of the setup at this track as well was more on the difficult side. We had quite a lot of front end, and after 4 or 5 laps, we really started to struggle with the rear. So that was something you had to keep in mind and had to manage. So I think maybe a few people were struggling with that, and then that causes some incidents. So no, definitely a more difficult race than the first one. But no, once again, I think I managed it pretty well, and I went for the move at the right time, and it paid off.
Did you set any expectations coming into week one of this championship on a goal? I mean, back-to-back race wins, it could not have gone any better. Where have things kind of worked out for you compared to what your hopes were?
To be honest, expecting a double win is maybe a bit of a stretch, but I think a double P3, for example, I don't think I would have expected much less than that. The pace is always strong. In all the categories on iRacing, and I'm spending a lot of time now that I'm finished F3 and this is my off season, so I've been spending a lot of time on the sim. So the pace has been really strong, and I think although a double win is not always expected, I think definitely I expected 2 strong results.
This is normally where we would ask the drivers what their kind of practice plan is going into the next round of the championship. But you guys will not learn where you'll be racing for rounds 3 and 4 until about 2 weeks' time, a day before. So what do you and the team do to prepare with that unknown looming in the distance?
I think the only thing you can really do, to be honest, is try and drive on tracks that you think is maybe what we'll have for the next round. These are two tracks that we had in the qualifying series, so that might be a characteristic to follow, to try and pick and choose what tracks we might test on. But no, I guess all you can really do, to be honest, is test on different tracks. Thankfully, we don't have a setup to worry about that's already done for us with it being a fixed setup, so that's one less thing to think about, which means we can just solely focus on our driving, which makes it a little bit easier and definitely better.
We appreciate your time tonight. Congratulations on a blistering start to this 8-round championship, and we'll talk to you again in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Your race winner tonight from both Mugello and Okayama, Alex Dunn, is 2 for 2. Graham Carroll had a good finish earlier today, Joey. It was a P6 to kick things off and a second place here in race number 2. You're with him.
Yeah, 2 solid finishes today, but the one we're celebrating right now is at Okayama, the driver from Scotland. Congratulations on the second place.
Thank you very much. Yeah, after the P6, it was, honestly, we're just sitting back and waiting for the crashes to happen, and in both races it kind of did, so it paid off for me. So, yeah, really happy.
So, talk to me about that final lap, because it literally all unfolded right out of your windshield. What did you do to avoid that accident? You said you kind of forecasted it happening. Did you expect it to happen in that area?
Yeah, I think beforehand, the penultimate lap, they all got very close and a few bits of contact. So I had my spotters in my ear. They were telling me that it's going to get spicy, and 3 teammates ahead as well. So I didn't really know how hard they were going to fight each other, because you all want to finish and you all want to score points. But yeah, obviously we know how it is going forward. A bit of a free for all. So they all tried to outbrake themselves going into the hairpin, and I just broke early. Watched what was happening, and I kind of nipped underneath Alejandro, so I kind of scraped through there unharmed. But now I'm really happy to come out in P2, and big congrats to Alex Dunn. Mega race from him and the rest of the guys. So yeah, very happy to scrape through there.
A little bit more of a technical question for you. I know you started go-karting pretty young and then went into the Formula Fords and whatnot, and then started eSports and everything. How much does that Formula Ford and real-world racing knowledge kind of transfer over into this F4 car?
I think it's a little bit crazier on the sim at the minute, to be honest, in this F4 series. So going into turn 1, I think I'm a little bit more reserved than others, because I just want to get out of the first corner. But no, everything really has taught me well for this F4. Obviously, a lot less downforce, but when you go out there to start a qualifying lap, you're still using the same part of your brain to extract the pace from the sim or the Formula Ford. So it's so similar, and it's taught me very well. And got a lot of experience in sim racing now, and I've used my Formula Ford experience to grow on my sim racing experience. So every little bit of real life racing can be transferred to the sim as well. So it's extra helpful.
Well, thanks for coming out and racing with us, Graham, and congrats on the 2 solid finishes to open up the season.
Thank you very much. See you next week.
Well, Evan, that was Graham Carroll driving the number 29 today.
And we'll continue with our podium finishers as Alejandro Sanchez gets a 3rd place finish in this second race of the day. So, Alex, congratulations. It is a good result for you, but another one where you lead a lot of laps and come up a spot or 2 short. How do you assess that?
I mean, it's not ideal, but at the end of the day, still P3. Quite happy with that. Of course, unfortunate incident in the last lap, and unfortunate incidents as well, fighting for the lead. We'll work on that, obviously. We'll learn from this as well. And yeah, we'll apply whatever we learn from this for our next couple rounds. Obviously, quite happy with P2 and P3, but P1 is where I want to be. So we'll try to work on that. Obviously, next round, I won't be able to practice as much as for each one, but we'll try to make the most of what we have, and yeah, keep fighting for the championship. At the end of the day, it's 8 rounds. We've only done 2, so yeah, looking forward for the next one.
Just like the race in Mugello, you start second, you jump to the race lead early, and then you've got Alex sitting on the gearbox for the better part of the race. What do you do when you're in the lead and you know Alex is behind you and you know it's kind of a matter of time? When we get down to 3 laps to go, 2 laps to go, are you trying to predict where he's going to make that move and try to be a little bit defensive, or do you feel like a sitting duck at that point?
Very much a sitting duck, but it's better to be P1 and with no danger behind, having a teammate behind, than being, I don't know, P5 surrounded by people from other teams. So at the end of the day, this is a championship where I think it's going to matter a lot finishing every race, and that's exactly what my goal is. Obviously, a couple wins will be good, but yeah, it's just scoring points across the board and not getting any zeros.
Well, really good pace for you and the entire team today for these first 2 rounds of the championship. A second and a third is an incredible start. We'll see you when we do it again in 2 weeks. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Well, that is Alejandro Sanchez, who is your third-place finisher tonight. Big thanks to Alex Graham and Alejandro for giving us some time post-race to chat. And it is our first opportunity to look at the driver standings for this F4 Esports Global Championship. And no surprise, Alex Dunn, 2 race wins back-to-back, a picture-perfect 50 at the top of the board. Sanchez happy with the good results, but look at the gap, 14 points. That's a huge margin for just 1 spot here and 2 spots there.
And I even look back at the top 5, 36 points back. So yeah, it started with fireworks for Alex Dunn, 2 for 2 in the number 22, but I think it's going to be a long, tough road throughout the season. I don't know if we're going to see a repeat winner in the future rounds, but Alex Dunn, he's got his work cut out for him.
He has started the very best way with 2 straight wins and has set the bar very high. We'll see if he can keep things on the offensive or if he starts to try to defend that points lead into the next races of this championship. And that's where we leave you with a question mark, because much like coming into this race where the drivers did not know that Mugello and Okayama would play host to the first 2 rounds of this championship until yesterday, we do not know where we're going racing for rounds 3 and 4, and the drivers will not find out until just 1 day before. That track announcement will happen on September the 27th, and then we will see you for rounds 3 and 4 of the championship that following Saturday, September 28th at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. That race and every race of this FIA SIMAGIC F4 Esports Global Championship can be found exclusively right here on the iRacing Esports Network. For Joey Atterbury and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to say thanks for tuning in, and congratulations go to Alex Dunn, who is 2 for 2 to open this championship.